She geeked on here. This is going to be the first in an occasional series of videos about interesting book finds. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I'm part of the Rubber City Book Posse. And one of the things we do is collect books that have been, via donation, or we buy them at library book sales, or if people are cleaning out their house or whatever, and we give them away. Usually it's been at some kind of reading festival in Akron is one of our big ones, but we also put them in little free libraries, or we just randomly give them to people, or we leave them in public somewhere and people pick them up. This is kind of a version of book crossing. Go to bookcrossing.com, look up Rubber City Book Posse on Facebook, whatever, we're there. Anyways, because of this, we do occasionally get some pretty interesting books. Some of them are just horrible, like really bad novels and stuff like that. But other times we get some interesting things. And so I wanted to maybe feature some in videos. And the first one I'm going to do came from the collection of someone who is very into art and traveling and things like that. And it's an architecture book. Doesn't sound all that interesting until you see exactly why I do think it's interesting. So here's the latest discovery, the architecture pack. Now, it may not seem like that exciting a book. It's about architecture. Has all this architecture stuff. It's from, you can see down here, 1997. And at that time, it cost $50. Unless you're in Canada, cost $70. So this was in, like I said, a box of donations. And I think I'm saving it for one person in particular who is literally studying architecture, because it's kind of a fun way to look at things. But I wanted to go through the book and show you why I think it's such an interesting find. This is what it's all about. This book has pop-ups. It is literally an adult version of a pop-up book. It's fantastic. So, but it's not just a pop-up book. It's one of those so many things to do books. Like, it has little, look at it at the side sort of things. And I think every section has things. Like, there's pop-ups within pop-ups. There's that pop-up. And then there's this pop-up. It has a whole thing about Frank Lloyd Wright and falling water. This is one of the reasons I wanted to share this book, because this is something that most people would not bother with. It's got these little, unfold it yourself kind of pop-ups. And it goes by time period. And interestingly, if you look, some of the writing, some of the captions are upside down, because you're meant to look at it from multiple angles. How cool is that? Like, seriously. So I wanted to give people a look at everything. And it's got, little things more about the people. There's a hell of a lot. If this was just, an average all written out kind of book, we're talking a couple hundred pages. But look at this. The Gothic Cathedral. It tells you all about Gothic cathedrals. It tells you about how arches were designed and developed. And it gives you little things to do to show you where the circles are on the arches. It's actually, this book is fascinating to me. Now, I'll admit, my dad was an architect, okay? That's not what I'm admitting. I'm just telling you my dad was an architect. I think this is why I'm so into this kind of book. But look at this. It's legit. It is the Sydney Opera House. Like, seriously. It's a pop-up of the Sydney Opera House. But, like, whenever I've traveled, I love seeing buildings. I love, looking at the architecture. And honestly, it's it's not easy to hold this book and a phone at the same time. But it's basically, I put that down to my dad being an architect. I'm fascinated by the buildings. Like, I don't know everything that's behind them, but growing up, seeing so many building sites and all that kind of thing, I think is what put that in me. But so you have this section, which is interesting. It's on wealth and opulence. So it's, you know, it's just for the sake of aesthetic and design and being as big as you possibly could. Modernism in Spain with Gaudi, sculptural buildings, which is kind of a cool thing to look into. New expressions of religion, looking, you know, making churches that don't look like traditional churches. So it's very, I don't know, it's just pretty cool. I mean, okay, this one needs a little pop out there. It gets into some fairly recent structures. And this is all about high rises. It's fun. It's like I said, this is, okay, maybe this might only be fun for me and no one's actually going to watch this video because they're like, it's an architecture book. But I don't know. I like it. This was all about, this part's kind of cool, maybe more if you're into studying architecture, but it's about the process of a particular build. And it was the Getty Center in Los Angeles. And it actually gives you things like the project timeline and, you know, plans for things. You actually get the plans, the diagrams, other things like at the Louvre and things like that. So yeah, it's a very cool book, and you even get, you can even put together something that you get in the back here, a little house. You get instructions to put it together. And that's how old it is. It has a cassette tape. So yeah, it's an interesting find. It's a book that I wouldn't have known about had it not been in that donated box of things. So there you go. That was my first interesting book find. There's been a lot of finds over the years, but for video purposes, it's the first. The Architecture Pack. If you're interested in that kind of thing and want to see a more adult kind of pop-up book, like I said, I thought it was kind of cool. Check your local libraries. They might have it. You might even find it on, you know, at a used bookstore or possibly clearance online or something. But I mean, really, it was $50. And ended up free in a donation box, so you never know where you're going to find these things. I hope you're doing okay. Bye for now.